My name is Vivienne, and this is the story of the Christmas I stopped shrinking. There was still steam rising off the sweet potato casserole when my older sister Diane set her fork down like she was dropping a gavel. "We need to talk," she said. I already knew what kind of talk it was going to be. The kind where I'm not allowed to have feelings. The kind where, if I do, they get filed under dramatic and dismissed before they even leave my mouth. My daughter Lily, 6 years old, the most patient soul I have ever known, was sitting beside me, quietly pressing her fork into a dinner roll, the way kids do when the air in a room turns sharp and adult. She'd already learned, somehow, without anyone teaching her, that certain tables were not meant for her to take up space at. I noticed that. I noticed it the way you notice a bruise on someone you love. Quietly, and all at once, Diane leaned back in her chair. She tilted her head. Her husband Greg sat beside her, nodding along at nothing, the human equivalent of elevator music. He'd always been just comfortable enough in my parents' house to be insufferable about it. The kind of man who could watch something collapse and immediately wonder who'd be blamed. "I think we've all just reached a point," Diane said, smoothing her napkin, "where things have gotten too complicated." My mother, Carol, pressed her lips together in that way she has, like she's performing restraint. My father, Roy, stared at his plate, a man who had spent 40 years avoiding conflict so thoroughly that he'd become the conflict. "Too complicated," I repeated. "Okay. You should leave," Diane said. "Clean. Practiced. And honestly, don't come back," my mother chimed in, and she said it softly, almost gently, like she was correcting a recipe. "Holidays are just easier without all this tension, Vivienne." I looked at my dad. For just a second, 1 second, I thought he might say something. Anything. A wait or a hold on, or even just his eyes going wide enough to signal he was still a person in the room. But he just looked at his mashed potatoes like they owed him something. Lily's small hand tightened around her fork. And that was it. That was the moment something in me stopped auditioning. "Lily, baby," I said, keeping my voice even, keeping my eyes on her. "Can you go grab your coat and your backpack? We're leaving." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just slid out of her chair and walked toward the hallway. And the speed of it, the quiet, practiced ease of her leaving, broke something in me that I'm still working on putting back together. She'd been ready to go for a long time. She just needed me to be ready first. The moment she rounded the corner, Diane crossed her arms. Greg exhaled like we'd just resolved a parking dispute. My mother said, "Rachel, don't make this a whole thing." I smiled. Not a warm smile. The kind you make when you realize you've been playing a game you were never meant to win. "Then you won't mind me doing this," I said. I walked past the dining room doorway into the kitchen and stopped at the cabinet near the far end of the counter. I'd put them there earlier that afternoon, tucked behind a stack of holiday platters like a secret I wasn't sure I'd have the nerve to keep. 3 envelopes, heavy paper, names written in black marker across the front. Mom, Dad, Diane. I'd driven to their house with Lily in the back seat, telling myself this was a new chapter. A reset. I'd thought, and I'm still embarrassed by this, honestly, that if I showed up with something big enough, something that mattered, they'd finally see me differently. "What is that?" Diane's voice had a new edge. "Are those cards?" Greg said, and then laughed like it was a punchline. My mother tilted her head. "Vivienne. Honestly." "Is it?" I said. I took the envelope labeled Mom and tore it in half. The sound was soft, but in that kitchen, in that silence, it landed like something breaking, which I suppose it was. My mother's smile dissolved. I tore Dad's next. Slow, clean, deliberate. My father went still. I tore Diane's last. And I didn't hesitate even a little. I set all 6 pieces on the counter in 3 neat piles and stood there looking at them. For a moment, no one moved. Then I turned. Took Lily's hand in the hallway. My daughter. Already in her coat. Backpack on. Face pale and wide-eyed and unshocked, which was somehow worse than anything, and we walked out the front door. Cold December air hit my face. The kind that makes your lungs remember they exist. I glanced back through the window without meaning to. I saw them at the counter. Saw my mother pick up a piece of torn paper and hold it close. Saw her face change smug to confused. Confused to pale. Pale to something I'd never seen on her before. The door flew open. "Vivienne." Diane's voice. Higher than I'd ever heard it. "Wait, wait." Footsteps on the frozen porch. My mother's coat half buttoned. My father moving faster than I'd seen him move in years. "Please." Mom's voice cracked. "Please. You can't just please." I opened the car door. Helped Lily in. Started the engine. And I drove away. Here's what they didn't know. Here's what I hadn't told anyone. My late husband Marcus was a structural engineer. He was brilliant and quiet and the kind of man who squeezed your hand under the table when your family was too much. who reminded you without words that you weren't crazy. We met in our late 20s. He was the first person who ever looked at the way my family treated me and said, plainly, without drama, "That's not okay." We got married. We had Lily. We started a life that felt, for the first time, like something I hadn't had to perform to earn. For years, Marcus and I quietly sent money to my parents every month. $250. Sometimes more when something came up, and something always came up, usually right after Diane had done something expensive. My parents never thanked us the way you thank someone who is choosing to help you. They received it the way you receive something you've decided you're owed. Diane would say things like, "I told them we'd work it out," as if she'd personally contributed anything beyond the suggestion that things would be fine. And then, 14 months ago, Marcus died at work. A scaffolding failure on a job site in outside Columbus, Ohio. Later, the investigation would use the word preventable. That word still lives in my chest like a splinter I can't reach. The monthly support to my parents stopped. Not out of anger. Out of survival. I could barely keep the lights on. My family noticed the missing money before they noticed my grief. My mother called more often after that, but not to ask how I was sleeping or whether Lily was eating. She called in that careful, hovering tone to ask if I was managing. Diane asked if I was being smart about finances, like widowhood was a cash flow problem. Greg made a joke about life insurance that he laughed at alone. When I finally had to ask them for help one month, Lily got sick. I missed work, the car needed repairs. The numbers just didn't reach. My mother sent a modest amount, and then posted about it on Facebook. A sad face emoji. A smiling family photo. Sometimes you have to step up, even when it's hard. Praying Vivienne finds her footing again soon. Diane commented. We'll always be there for her. Greg hit the thumbs up. I wanted to disappear. I didn't correct the narrative. I didn't mention the years of quiet support. I just stopped asking for anything and kept quiet about the one thing that might have changed everything. The settlement from Marcus's death didn't come right away. There were lawyers and delays and a company that moved like it was hoping I'd give up. I hired someone to handle it because I couldn't carry grief and paperwork at the same time without collapsing. And then, just before Christmas, it came through. $2.1 million. I sat in my kitchen and stared at the number on my screen for a long time. The first thing I thought, and I want you to understand how much I'd internalized their way of seeing me, was, I should help them. So I prepared 3 gifts. 3 envelopes. A combined $480,000. Divided to cover my parents' mortgage, their debts, their retirement, and give Diane a real reset, instead of another scramble. I told myself it was generosity. I think now it was a test I didn't know I was giving. They failed in the first hour. I didn't go home that night. Home was 2 hours away, and Lily had been through enough for one Christmas. I pulled into a hotel off I-71. A clean place with warm lighting and a front desk clerk who smiled at my daughter like she was someone worth smiling at. I booked a room with 2 beds. Lily kicked off her shoes and climbed onto one of them like she'd been holding her breath for hours. After a few minutes of quiet, she said, very softly, "Grandma doesn't like me." My throat tightened. "Lily." "She doesn't," Lily said. Not angry. Just certain. She always hugs Diane's kids first. She always gives them the better presents. She always laughs at what they say. I couldn't argue with her. She was 6 years old, and she was right. "That's not your fault," I said. Lily nodded slowly, like she was testing whether she believed it. "But you do it too," she said, looking at me. "You get quiet and small around them." I froze. Kids don't miss much. They just don't always have the words yet. I pulled her into my arms. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." She fell asleep an hour later watching a holiday movie, sprawled sideways across the bed like a starfish. I sat in the dark and listened to my phone buzz and tried to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. On the 3rd day after Christmas, Diane posted a photo of herself in my parents' living room, Christmas tree in the background, caption long and wounded and carefully vague for exactly 2 sentences before she used my name. Vivienne showed up expecting sympathy and reacted with cruelty when we simply tried to have an honest conversation. And yes, since people are asking, Vivienne received a significant settlement after Marcus's death and has made clear she has no intention of supporting her own family. The comments filled in exactly the way she wanted. Poor Carol and Roy. Some people are so ungrateful. Praying for your family, Diane. I made Lily lunch. I helped her with her math worksheet. I watched her color a picture of a snowman. And I thought about how many rooms she'd sat quietly in, making herself small, watching the adults perform love for each other without extending any of it to her. And then I opened my bank app and pulled up 5 years of transfers. I screenshot them. I screenshotted my mother's old Facebook post, the one with the sad emoji and the stepping up for family caption. And I wrote the cleanest post I've ever written in my life. This is what family looked like before Marcus died. Transfer receipts. Month after month. Years of quiet support that I never posted about, never bragged about, never used to leverage anything. This is what happened the one time I needed help. My mother's post. For the record, I didn't storm out. I left when my parents and my sister told me Christmas was better without me in front of my 6-year-old daughter. I had come to give, not to take. The gifts I brought were torn up and left on their counter. That was my choice. And I stand by it. I turned off my phone and sat with Lily on the couch. It didn't take long. The comments on Diane's post shifted. Her post got edited, then edited again, then deleted entirely. My aunt, my dad's sister, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years, commented on my post. Roy should be ashamed. Vivian and Lily deserved so much better than this. 3 days later, they came to my door. All of them. Mom and Dad and Diane and Greg, who positioned himself in the back like a supportive piece of furniture. My mother was holding a cake. I opened the door just enough to stand in the frame. We just want to talk. Mom lifted the cake slightly. We didn't mean what we said, you know that. You meant it enough to say it, I said. Lily needs her family, Greg offered, and I almost laughed. Behind me, I felt Lily's hand curl into the back of my shirt. I looked at my mother, then my father, then Diane. No, I said. It was the calmest word I have ever spoken. I closed the door. I locked it. And for the first time in my 34 years on this earth, locking people out didn't feel like cruelty. It felt like finally choosing my daughter over my own need to be chosen. That was 8 months ago. Lily laughs more now. She sleeps better. She knows our house is hers. She stopped asking about Grandma, which hurt more than I expected it to, but also told me everything I needed to know about how she'd felt before. The settlement money is mostly in long-term investments. Lily has a college fund, a trust, and a cushion that means her future will never depend on people who decide her worth based on convenience. We bought a small house outright in a town where nobody knows our history, and the neighbors brought us pie when we moved in. It's not flashy. It's just ours. I still grieve Marcus. I always will. Some mornings, the silence where he used to be is deafening. But the grief isn't tangled up with fear anymore. We're sad. We're also safe. And for the first time in Lily's life, maybe mine too, those two things get to exist separately. Through the grapevine, I hear things. The house my parents were counting on their mortgage being paid off. Retirement plans that didn't survive. A silence between Diane and my mother that apparently started around New Year's and hasn't fully recovered. I used to think keeping that money would haunt me. It doesn't. What would have haunted me is teaching my daughter that cruelty deserves a reward. That if someone hurts you loudly enough, you owe them a soft landing. That love is something you purchase at the cost of your own dignity. Lily watched me close that door. She didn't know exactly what it meant, but I think somewhere in her little girl body, in the part of her that had been quietly counting peas at a table that never wanted her, she felt something release. I hope so. I hope she carries that forward for the rest of her life. The family we needed wasn't behind us on that porch. It was in the car. It had been. The whole time. So tell me, did I go too far, or not far enough? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting your kid, I want to hear your story.